Hello and welcome to the TGH College Hardwood Podcast. I am Joe. With me is Greg, as always, and we're here to talk about college basketball. It is March. Greg, we have a bracket. How are you doing?
I hate it. I hate my bracket. It sucks. Let's just get to the part where we start watching games and my bracket can be done. Although I was our winner last year in our friend
Hmm.
group, as you pointed out. I completely forgot that, but
Yeah,
uh, I don't know, man. I'm not feeling luck on my side this year.
yeah. If I remember it, you had like some of the worst first and second round picks ever,
Correct.
but you had the champion, and you had some good Sweet 16 and Elite Eight picks, and that's all that matters sometimes in these bracket pools. So, Greg, we have to start off. I mean, we could do a recap of championship week. Big St. John's wins the Big East tournament. That's awesome. Michigan wins the Big Ten. Go down the list. But we have a bracket, and it's hard not to fill that out. The first thing we need to do is talk about bubble teams. If there is something specific anyone wants to talk about for championship week,
Let's,
I
hey,
would.
let's start with Seth Davis's bubble team, Vanderbilt. They were on the bubble. And I'm glad they got a 10 seed.
Well, I was kind of. I agree with you that Vanderbilt was not a bubble team, but West Virginia was a team that I had as a 10 seed, and they were out, and that was the most surprising team I think we saw because they weren't even really in the bubble talk, and they get left out. So that is point one that we have. But there's several things here. Now we have. I think the most egregious thing, Greg, is North Carolina gets in the tournament, 1-12 in quad one. Their second best win, maybe over SMU or Wake, depending on how you feel about it, or if you're some dude in my Twitter mentions American, because they beat another team who won the conference tournament. American is in a playing game as a 16 seed, so they get into the conference tournament, or they get in the NCAA tournament. The chairman of the NCAA selection committee is a North Carolina AD, and yes, he's out of the room when they discuss North Carolina, but it seems a little fishy. And then they asked him, "How did you decide this?" After the selection, they asked him this, and he said, "I'm not allowed to talk about it. I'm going to defer to them since I wasn't in the room." Which is what he should do in this case. And the other person on the interview with CBS was like, "Well, they would have been our first team out if UAB would have won." Didn't answer the question about why they were in or how they get in with one quad one win. So we're left with this non-answer here. And Greg, I would say I'm very upset they're in for a lot of reasons. It does give credence to the fact that we should not expand the tournament, but I'm very upset that they got in. But that doesn't matter. They're in now, I guess. But how did you feel about them?
There is only one thought that went through my head when they made it in. You can agree or disagree with this. I will take them getting into the tournament if it means one thing and one thing only. If it means that teams start scheduling tougher out of conference. If that's what we get out of this, I'll take it. I don't think that's what like I don't think there's going to be a knee jerk reaction. All of a sudden, coaches are going to start, scheduling really tough because at the end of the day, this was the last team in. I think we're just going to see things, go exactly what they. But if all of a sudden next year we get, and maybe it won't be next year by this time, but maybe it'll be, the following season. Okay, we get some more home and homes, some more, of those matchups that in November and December, other than the MTEs that we like to see. I'll take it, but like it seems, Joe, like the way they got in was like you said. They mentioned that that non-conference strength of schedule, and it seems like the bane of existence to you was kind of what got them in, which is that those predictive metrics, those efficiency metrics, the Ken Palms and the Torvik, and I think ESPN's BPI has them at 25. So it seems like that's what got them in, but like they're quite literally their best win is UCLA, and they have a loss to Stanford, which is quad three. I guess you could say like, okay, yeah, they're 8-0 in quad two or whatever it was, but like, let's just for fun, let's just read their quad two wins. SMU, Dayton, Wake Forest, Florida State, Pitt, Notre Dame, NC State, Syracuse. Those were the things that the committee cited. Oh, they're 8-0 in quad two. Okay. I mean, like, you would agree, like at this point, with maybe when the quad system first came out, we kind of like, all right, quad one, quad two. For all intents and purposes, all anyone talks about is quad one wins. Like it's just like as you start moving down the line, these things hurt you less and less. You know, um, I don't know if you want to, because this is one of the things that in my mind, I get, I don't know what to do with is like how do you view the benefit of a quad one win versus the the kind of the take back of a quad three, quad four loss? Because they've got a quad three loss. How much does that knock them down a peg? I mean, they don't have an assortment of quad one wins, but I guess well, West Virginia's got a couple of quad two losses, and that again was what the committee chairman cited when they were talking. So I think that's my where I get lost is like how much does one of those peg you down? Almost if you want to talk about a trade system where it's like, all right, if you have one quad three loss, that's going to cost you a quad. I don't know. I don't know how you look at that stuff when you're going through your bracketology. I would really like, and I'm sure the people at home would like kind of love to hear how you go through the process when you're picking and choosing, especially with bubble teams like this.
Yeah, I think quad four losses really affect things more than anything. So we saw Boise State miss out on the bubble. They lost to Colorado State in the championship game in the Mountain West. I mean, they have a resume that's not too bad if you look for like a bubble team: 3-6 quad one, 5-2 quad two, 5-1 quad three, and then you have that one loss in quad four, and that just kills you. So I think it's like a relative scale. I would say I thought North Carolina, if they didn't have that quad three loss, if they beat Stanford and they're 1-12 and every clean everywhere else, it's a much easier decision, right? But you have to say not only did they not have good wins, but they also had a bad loss, and that kind of makes it more even out. So it's also a case by case basis too, where North Carolina beat two teams in the field, one at large team. You have to look at some of the wins. Xavier had one quad one win, and their resume is much better if you look at the results. If you look at the metrics of things, which we're having a lot of debate on Twitter with a lot of people about how there's some different indexes out there. KPI index that is very biased toward Big Ten teams because the guy who came up with it is the Michigan State Associate Athletic Director. So that's something to note that they actually use that on the committee. But if you look at Xavier's you look at Xavier's wins, like they have one quad one win, but they also, they beat Wake. That's great because North Carolina beat Wake. But they go on and they beat teams like Creighton. We talked about Greg. They beat UConn, both teams in the field. They did a good job of getting wins over teams that were going to make the tournament as well. So that is something where it's like you can't just look just at the quad ones. I think now it's more of like, hey, look at the quad ones, also look at the metrics. All the top 40 teams in the net made the NCAA tournament this year. I think the highest team left off is Ohio State at 41. I don't know if that's been updated through today's games, but that's what at least before today's game. So that's going to be coming
That's
to
what they
play
were
too.
showing on this.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think this is a crazy like miscarriage of justice here. To be honest, I will say yes. If it gives people to schedule games, that's great. But man, like North Carolina, you could help. Like you could have helped yourself, even if you lose all the games against the top tier competition. Just beat Louisville, beat Clemson, beat Pitt. Like come on. So we've seen better teams be left out of the tournament. That's what makes it frustrating. And there is no like I would say the consistency is something to take into account here too. Louisville, I was low on for bracketologists around the web. Everyone thought they were a 6 seed. I had them as a 7 because I was like, well, they don't have a lot of quad one wins. I think they were 4 and 5 quad one the last time I remember. And they get an 8 seed, and it's kind of like, okay, it's probably because they don't have a lot of quad one wins, right? And they were 23 in the net, so like, there's an argument they should have been a higher seed, but like I don't. How do you have Louisville at an 8, but North Carolina even on the bubble discussion if that's the case? So and yes, every case is different. You have to look at different things. I'm a big fan of getting rid of athletic directors on the committee and just having people who know ball. So Greg and I will put our names up there as well. But that was the biggest one, Greg. We have to talk about Xavier gets in. We talked about their resumes a little bit different. They're a little bit lower on the metrics, but they have a couple more better results in terms of who they have beaten. Texas gets in. A lot of people were upset about that because they were 7-5 in quad two, or excuse me, 3-5 quad two, 7-10 in quad one. So there's a lot of losses they have, but also quad two losses. So there's some teams that I think those three teams are the bubble teams. San Diego State, most people had in. I think there was a bigger case for San Diego State to be left off if you look at their resume too. But it kind of seems like a jumbled mess. There's North Carolina who has no good wins. There's Texas who has a lot of good wins and no bad losses. There's Xavier who's kind of in the middle, but doesn't have the best metrics. So I think more clarity in the future. And they mentioned, from my perspective, Greg, just on those last two teams, they mentioned that they're using a lot more metrics this past year, and they use that in their evaluation. I hate that. This is why we're in this situation. That's why North Carolina got in the tournament, and that is stupid as hell. The game should matter. and going 1-12 against quad one should matter. And for Texas too, I mean, if they were out, you could easily say going 3-5 in quad two is just bad. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm very upset with the committee. This was a weak bubble, so teams who probably didn't deserve were going to get it anyway, but they still seem like seemingly made the wrong choices here.
I mean, the other thing, Joe, like essentially Colorado State is the only team you could put as a bid stealer. There were
Mm-hmm.
that so like in a normal year, you're usually going to get. I think what we get last year, like five. You would expect to get like maybe at least one or two, and then as the committee did say, hey, if UAB wins that Memphis game, Carolina's out. All right, fine. But like if we get something else crazy, so usually championship week gives, and we got some good games. We got some. We didn't get necessarily a ton of unexpected things, but we got some good games. So we ended up with a bracket, like you said, where the last teams in were, probably like in a normal year don't make it, but that's the way it worked out. So can't wait for us to get to 72 or 78 and have Minnesota in the field, or I don't know, Cornell or one of those teams that's in the whatever in the. I don't want to name names, but it's
Yeah,
just like we're doing this with 68, and you want to expand the field. Why? I
yeah.
don't. I was just can't. I know we've reiterated it and rehashed it. I was watching that selection show just now, and like I, you know, I'm fine cutting the line here, and I would even be fine if they would have gone back to 64, which Xavier wouldn't have made it. Okay, fine. I'll take that. But like we're talking about teams that, as you and I have both said, really probably don't deserve to be in the tournament. And we'll say it here: whether or not Carolina deserves to be in the tournament is not going to be proven or disproven if they make a run to the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight or something stupid like that. That does not mean they deserve. It's not a ball don't lie situation. It doesn't mean they oh yeah,
Mhm.
well it means they were good. No, it's based on resume. Period. Amen. End of story. They win. That's great for them. It doesn't mean they deserve to be in.
Absolutely. Won't spend too much more time on this, Greg, but the KPI, which I know something we've talked about in our text messages, the Kevin Pauga index is what I referenced earlier. It is like basically like war in baseball, where you get a metric for winning or losing a game that's either up to plus 1.0 or minus 1.0. That is like what the committee is using. That's one of the things the committee is using now. It is a good idea in theory, but it is a flawed metric if you look at how some of the results were affected. So just because someone works in NCAA doesn't mean we have to use their metric. We don't need a million metrics to tell us which teams are good. Like Greg, me and you this offseason, we're gonna come up with our own metric. And it's gonna be called the ball knowers metric, and you're gonna be like, hey, this team's one, this team's two, and they're gonna ask us for our criteria. We're just gonna make it up as we go. Because that's what it seems like we're doing here. All right. Let's get to the bracket. Now, the best thing to do, Greg, is probably go region by region and get to our Sweet 16s. We will not be making our Sweet 16 or Elite Eight picks because those are very far in the future and they may not happen. So we're going to make our first two-round picks, and we will then, at the end of the show, make our final four picks and our national championship pick to make sure everyone has it honestly from us at the start. Now, the way we're going to do this, Greg, is I think we should just do pods. So we'll start off, top left quadrant here with Auburn. And we're going to have Auburn against the 16 seed play-ins and Louisville and Creighton. I will let you take it away. You pick who you have coming out of that quadrant of four teams.
Okay, so you want to do the pot of four, and then
Yeah,
let
and you can
you.
break down both games if you want to, but yeah,
I mean, I feel like so we don't have to bounce back and forth. That's probably the best thing to do. So, um, I'll take Auburn to beat the 16 seed next. I'm going to take Creighton to beat Louisville, although Louisville is probably a little underseeded, like you already said. But I like where Creighton is at. Makes it all the way to the Big East title game. I will pick them to win this game, even if it's a little Big East ACC, maybe not the best leagues in the country this year, but I'll take Creighton with where they're at right now, and I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and pick Auburn to beat Creighton in the second round.
yeah, I have the same picks there. I have Auburn winning the 16 game. I have Creighton beating Louisville. Now, very interesting. This game is in Lexington. We have Auburn, Tennessee, and who's the other one? One other team. I forget that. Auburn, Louisville, and Tennessee are all in Lexington, which is kind of funny that they're playing Rupp Arena. So there's gonna be a lot of Louisville fans there. But I like Creighton. They have rim protection with Ryan Kalkbrenner. They have Stephen Ashworth running the point, doing a good job. I think Louisville maybe gets a little bit of beneficial. They got underseeded. They should have been like at least a 6 or a 7, to be honest. But they I think they got a lot of benefit from playing in the ACC. So I'm going to go Creighton over Louisville, and then I will take Auburn over Creighton as well. Although I do think that'll be one to watch. If it is that matchup, we get Kalkbrenner on the inside against the bigs of Auburn. I think it'll be fun to watch there and see if Auburn can get back on track after struggling down the stretch. All right, so the next little quadrant we have the number 5 seed Michigan going up against the number 12 seed UC San Diego. Greg, one quick note on that before we get to our picks here after I go to the next one. Would have loved to see where UC San Diego was if they would have lost to UC Irvine in the conference tournament final because they were 35 in the net, and that would have been interesting to see. So, very team that people are really excited to watch play here. And then Texas A&M, the 4 seed, and Yale is the 13 seed as the winners of the Ivy.
Yeah, I know we had talked a little bit about they played now I'm blanking on it. UC they played UC Irvine in the or no. Yes. Who am I they played someone else in their conference title game that was like they're like not next four out, but like they're somewhere in the
Yeah,
next,
yeah. UC
you know,
Irvine, yeah.
I can't. Okay, it was UC Irvine.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I would obviously I would have loved to see, maybe that pushes North Carolina out, but I would assume with the 12 seed, no. I would assume we just get UC Irvine in and UC San Diego out. This is gonna be my first upset pick. As Joe already mentioned, I am great at picking first and second round games, as we know from last year. I'm going to pick UC San Diego. And as Seth Davis said, for anyone who watched the selection show, it is not their first year in Division One. Is their first year eligible for the NCAA tournament? Yes. Both Joe and I picked them to win their conference tournament, which they did. Although they had healthy competition in the end there. Nothing I necessarily dislike about Michigan. Obviously, just finished winning the Big Ten tournament. But if you're going to these 5-12s, they always provide. eh, I'm gonna pick UC San Diego as my one of my upset picks. Texas A&M, I am gonna pick them to beat Yale, and then I'm gonna pick them to beat UC San Diego. Although I know there's probably gonna be a contingent of people that watch basketball that are gonna pick UC San Diego to make the Sweet 16. I will not. I will take Texas A&M to make the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I am also going to go with the upset here, Greg. The reason being, Michigan has struggled with turnovers, and UC San Diego forces a lot of turnovers too. They have guys who can score. I like their defense. I like their offense too. I don't think they have a lot of like the talent of some of these other teams. But when you have a team that specifically has an issue like this, what Michigan does, they're going to need Danny Wolf to play point guard, and they're going to need him to not turn the ball over and that is asking a lot of a guy who's 7 feet tall. So I'm going to go UCSD in that upset too. And I'm probably since we're both picking it, it'll be wrong. I'm going Texas A&M over Yale. I've been tweeting a lot about Yale the last week, Greg. Absolute fantastic job by James Jones at Yale, who lost Matt Nolan to USC, Danny Wolf, and then I think one or two other seniors. He just reloads. A lot of the guys from the team last year step up in bigger roles. I think Texas A&M is just so physical and so tough to beat with that rebounding they have and the big guys they have that I think Texas A&M wins. And then I think they do beat UCSD to get to the Sweet 16 and set up an Auburn Texas A&M Sweet 16. A couple notes here, Greg. It will be fun to see Danny Wolf against his former team if Yale pulls off an upset. Michigan wins their game, but also I do think that seeing this matchup of Texas A&M versus Michigan with those bigs going at it would be awesome too if that happens as well. But we both have UCSD and Texas A&M.
I was literally about to say like I want my bracket to be right, but I am not going to be upset if we get to see Michigan play against that with their twin towers play against the way Texas A&M plays defense. That would be a fun game to watch.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so we have a lot more to get to, Greg. Let's go with the 6 seed in this region. We have Ole Miss. They'll be going up against the playing game of San Diego State and North Carolina. And then we have Iowa State, the 3 seed, going up against the 14 seed Lipscomb.
You don't have to pick it in your app, but for the record, I will be picking San Diego State to beat Carolina, and then I will be picking Ole Miss to win. So it doesn't matter for actually picking it in the app or whatever. You can pick on a lot of apps. You can pick SDSU/UNC, but I'm going to pick Ole Miss to win that game, so it's irrelevant. But on the record, I'm picking San Diego State to beat UNC since there's nowhere to click that. I'm going to pick Iowa State to beat Lipscomb, but news that we should probably chit chat a little bit about, not a ton of time. Keyshawn Gilbert apparently not going to be in for the tournament, and that really puts a downer on where I would have picked Iowa State if that news literally came out like
Mm-hmm.
30 minutes from now. I don't know where Iowa State would be in my field, but I'm going to pick them. I'm going to pick them to lose to Ole Miss, and I don't think I had projected in my head that I was going to pick Ole Miss to the Sweet 16. But Iowa State's one of those teams that I love them as a team, and as we saw throughout the year, when they're missing a piece, it's like it doesn't even seem to matter which one. Like they play great as a team, and all of them seem to be keystones. You're missing one role here, one role there, and they dragged a little bit. So not how I imagined it, but I'm taking Ole Miss to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I am going to do the same thing, and it pains me to do it because I've not been as high as on Iowa State as you, but I think the problem here is like Ole Miss. I'm going to take them to beat whoever the playing champion is playing. I think those are the two worst teams in the field, to be honest, between San Diego State and North Carolina. Ole Miss's defense is
To be
good.
fair, though, San Diego State has that win over Houston early in the year.
They
Like,
do.
just they have potential.
They definitely do. Uh, I'm going to take Ole Miss. They got on a run in the SEC tournament. But the first time I've ever crossed something out of my bracket is I double checked Keyshawn Gilbert's status, and him being out is, I had Iowa State penciled into the Elite Eight because they are such a good team when they have everyone, but when they have one piece out, it makes things tough, and they handled things pretty well in the Big 12 tournament. But that also took Curtis Jones just going off, and I'm not sure that's sustainable, especially against a team like Ole Miss. So I'm giving Ole Miss win that gets the playing game. I have Iowa State beating Lipscomb. I think they can still get past Lipscomb, to be honest, although they should be on upset watch just because of that injury. There's a lot of teams dealing with injuries that you should definitely watch out for, and we'll mention them as we go through. But I'm going to have Ole Miss win that one, too. I really thought they were underseeded, too. I thought they probably should have been a 5 seed. Add that up with Iowa State having the injury, that's going to make things difficult. So Ole Miss to the Sweet 16 for me as well, but if everything was equal, it would have been Iowa State. All right, so the last part of this bracket, Greg, we have Marquette as the 7 against New Mexico as the 10 seed, and then Michigan State as the 2, and Bryant as the 15 seed.
Joe, I think there were like 2 or 3 games that really gave me pause, and I was like, I'm gonna have to come back to this one. Marquette, New Mexico was one of them. There's a lot of good pieces with New Mexico. They're playing good ball, but some of those early season feelings that I had about Marquette and Cam Jones, they're just I'm hanging on to them, and that might be my downfall. I'm not picking them to go too far, but I am going to pick them to beat New Mexico. Pick Michigan State to beat um, Bryant at America East, and then I will pick Michigan State to go ahead and beat Marquette.
Michigan State to the Sweet 16 for me as well to make things short and sweet. I have Marquette beating New Mexico too. This is a team that is inherently flawed, and we talked about that. The lack of size against Michigan State, I think, will be an issue. Uh, but I do think that Cam Jones can put on a show, maybe the first round, and maybe even second round. They just lose that game. I always feel like Marquette and Michigan State are always matched up in the second round for some reason. Maybe they are. All right, so that completes that region, Greg. We'll come back to this region to get your pick for the Final Four later. Let's go over to the top right region, and we have where Duke is the number 1 seed. They'll be starting their journey off in Raleigh. They'll be playing the winner of the 16 seed matchup. And we have in the 8-9 matchup, Mississippi State, and then Baylor, who's at number 9. A lot of people thought they were closer to the bubble than number 9, but they stick in at number 9, Greg.
All right, so I have this. Who's this? This Duke team? I think them. I think I'm going to
Yeah.
have them beat. I know it's very un-American of me to pick them to beat American, but I'll pick Duke, I guess. Usually with the 8-9s and the 7-10s, like I said just before, like it makes me think a little bit. But you know, as much as I felt early season for Baylor, I really turned on them, and I don't have strong feelings about Mississippi State. But we know they can. They can score. Defense isn't as great as it has been in recent years. Maybe picked up a little bit, but I'll pick them to beat Baylor. I didn't really worry about that one too much. And then I'll pick Duke to beat Mississippi State.
Yeah, I have Duke winning their game, obviously. I want Mississippi State to win their game as well. I think Josh Hubbard could be a March star. I think Mississippi State did a really good job of addressing the offense after last year. I'm still waiting for that Chris Jans defense to click in. I think they ranked like 47th in defensive efficiency on KenPom. Um, if they can lock in for this game, A, they can be Baylor, but B, I think they can give Duke a run for their money. We've seen good Duke teams struggle in the second round. Like we saw that Zion team struggle with UCF in the second round. There is a path where I think Mississippi State could upset Duke, especially because I don't think Duke has been adequately challenged in a long time. And Mississippi State, if they do show that toughness, can happen. But I'm taking Duke to win. I would love to see Josh Hubbard put up a fight and have a good game, just to kind of have more interesting games to watch. But Duke's going to go to the Sweet 16 for me. Greg, the next little quadrant we have here, we have number 5 seed Oregon and number 12 seed Liberty, and then 4 seed Arizona against number 13 seed Akron.
I'm going to make this short and sweet as far as not giving a ton of analysis, but I'm picking Oregon and Arizona, and then I'm going to pick Arizona to beat Oregon. But this is a quadrant, a pod that I would not be surprised if we looked up and it was Liberty Akron in the second round. That would not surprise. I'm not going to pick it. I'm not going to claim credit if it happens. None of that. But it's March. Both of those teams they're playing are capable of winning those games. It's absolutely possible. I I don't have strong feelings about either Oregon or Arizona, but again, gut feeling. All right, I'm just going to pick them to win both of those games. I picked an upset earlier. I don't like picking a ton of upsets, but I also don't like picking a ton of chalk. I'll just keep it where my gut takes me in this current pod.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I like what you said there. Caden Matheny for Liberty went off in their CUSA championship game, so it got named to watch for Liberty. I could see Akron. They played really well to come back against Miami Ohio in the MAC championship. But I'm going Oregon out of this quadrant. I have Arizona winning their first game. I have Oregon winning their first game, and then I have Oregon beating Arizona. Former Pac-12 matchup there, so RIP Bill Walton. I can't trust this Arizona team with Caleb Love. I can't trust the efficiency. I can't trust the players around them. I think it's they're doomed for an early exit unless Caleb Love goes off. There's a couple players in this tournament, Greg, where they could lose early. Like if Texas A&M has a Wade Taylor game where he goes 2 of 15 again, or Caleb Love has a game like that, things can get dangerous. But there's also like the chance that they go on a run and they score 30 points, and that team is dangerous, and maybe they upset Duke or Auburn in Sweet 16. So worth noting, I'm going to go Oregon. I think they're more steady Eddie, Dana Altman. I really respect what he's done at the Oregon program. I'm going to take them. Next little part of this bracket, Greg, we have BYU as the 6 against VCU, the 11 seed, and then number 3 seed Wisconsin against number 14 seed Montana.
I am going to take BYU to beat VCU. I'm going to take Wisconsin to beat Montana. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that because I am going to pick BYU to beat Wisconsin.
Mm.
Obviously, we know this Wisconsin team is different. They do score more, they do play faster, but BYU is on a bit of a roll right now. Before they lost to Houston, who is a 1 seed in this bracket, they had won, I believe it was 9 straight, including the win over Iowa State in the Big 12 quarterfinals. So they're playing good ball. Igor Denman is he's worth watching, and Spencer Ritchie's been great. So got an NBA coach on the bench. So I this is I guess my weird pick for this part of the bracket.
All right. I had a very tough time picking this game. The first game, BYU VCU. I ended up taking VCU because they're really not that far off if you look at any of the metrics that you see, like on KenPom on anything. BYU's been hot lately. I still worry about them overall as a team. I really like Richie Saunders. I like Igor Denham, who we've talked about going to be probably a lottery pick. That defense scares me, and VCU's a little bit more well balanced. Their offense lags a little bit behind their defense, as they historically have done. But I'm going to take VCU in the upset there. And then I'm going Wisconsin to beat Montana, and I'm going Wisconsin to beat VCU in the second round as well. I've mentioned I do like them. I do think their ceiling is decently high I don't think national championship high, But I do think their ceiling is pretty high this year, at least from where we started with them. John Tanjay, I think gives them another element, and they just play so different than what we've seen. I think they can make a little run here and go to the Sweet 16. All right, the next quadrant we have, Greg, we have number 7 seed St. Mary's, number 10 seed your bubble team, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and then we have number 2 seed Alabama and number 15 seed Robert Morris, or as you call him, Bobby Moe. Greg, one note here: Grant Nelson had an injury in the SEC tournament. They are hoping he is back for the first round, but it doesn't seem like there's one like they're leaning one way or another whether he's actually going to be back.
One quick note before we move on. I have no idea what name I said, but I meant Richie Saunders. I think I said like Spencer Ritchie or something stupid. Like I can't. I You should have called me out on it. I don't know what two names came out of my mouth. It was something generic, but it wasn't Richie Saunders. That's who I meant. So we're gonna move on. But I wanted people to know that after I said it, I realized it. I just didn't want to stop Joe mid thought.
Very good.
I I I'm gonna pick Vanderbilt to beat St. Mary's as much as it pains me, the loving relationship that I've had with St. Mary's over the years. Um, just going to pick Vanderbilt coming through that battle tested SEC, and I'm not necessarily going to pick SEC over against the world. In every pod, you'll get to see in the next pod a little bit of the opposite, but I'll pick Bama to beat Bobby Moe. And I did see someone else calls it Bobby Moe, so that's not just a me thing.
Mhm.
And then I will go ahead and since I have to pick an SEC team, if it's Alabama or Vanderbilt, I think I'm gonna pick Bama to beat Vanderbilt. Like you said, Grant Nelson's health is in question. It is a little scary with the Bama team with the way they play, just kind of the running gun, and they play fast and they chuck threes. They maybe miss Latrell Reitzel, but they're kind of still playing the same way as they would have without him. I'm going to pick this team to go deep, and it's either I'm either going to love it or hate it. I think they're either losing early or they're making the Final Four. I don't think there's a Sweet 16 early. I think it is one extreme or the other.
Yeah, I'll start off St. Mary's. I'm going to go with them over Vanderbilt. I didn't think I was going to take them, but Vanderbilt, their metrics aren't the greatest, especially defensively. And I think St. Mary's can maybe change things up on them, and I think play some good basketball. I mean, they've proven that I think are a solid team at the very least. The metrics like them better than Vanderbilt by quite a bit. So I'm going to go St. Mary's, and then Alabama to obviously beat Bobby Morris, as Bobby Moe, as you call him. We have St. Mary's, Bama second round. I'm actually going St. Mary's in the upset here, Greg. I didn't want to be too chalk. Alabama's been a team that I have been penciling in as maybe an upset pick for a couple different reasons. The Grant Nelson thing is, I think, like the icing on the cake for them. Maybe the worst way to put it because that's an injury, and I don't want to say it like that, but like that's what maybe put it over the top for me for it to pick against them so early in the tournament. Like you mentioned, could happen. I am not sure that the way they play fits their team. We always kind of talk about more, maybe more so in football, Greg. Like you need to build your ideas or how you're going to run your offense based on the talent you have. They run offense like they've always been running it, but they don't shoot the best this year. They have guys who really don't shoot well, like LeBaron Filan, as you mentioned. If Grant Nelson's out and they really struggle to stretch the floor from having a big guy there, that could really change things here. I'm not like totally in love with St. Mary's. I just think Alabama has a lot more issues than maybe people are willing to admit because they're a 2 seed. So for that reason, I took St. Mary's. Now I will say if it, I would kind of wish there was another 7 seed in this region that I could have picked them or a 10 seed that I like better. But I am taking St. Mary's to the Sweet 16. And I do think they were more battle tested this year too, Greg, with the WCC having obviously Gonzaga, but also Santa Clara and San Francisco being better, and Oregon State and Washington State. It was a little bit more oomph to it, we'll say. So I'll take St. Mary's to the Sweet 16. So, Greg, I forgot to recap last time, so let's do both regions real quick. I have Auburn, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Michigan State, which I believe you had the same. And then I have Duke, Oregon, Wisconsin, and St. Mary's. Go back through your Sweet 16 teams from this region.
This region, if the app will work with me,
I didn't mean to throw you out. You had Duke.
is good. You're good. Duke, Arizona, BYU, Bama is my Sweet 16 in this region.
All
The
right.
other region is Bama, A&M, Ole Miss, Michigan State. It's my Sweet 16.
All right. So let's go to the bottom right quadrant, Greg. We have Houston as the one going up against SIU Edwardsville, their first appearance in the NCAA tournament. And then we have Gonzaga as the 8 and Georgia as the 9 in a pretty good matchup there as well.
I am picking Houston to beat the I believe is the Cougars. SIU Edwardsville. It's a big
Mm-hmm.
cat. I
Battle,
can't
bat,
remember which
bat,
one it is.
battle of the Cougars there.
There you go. And here's what I already previewed. I'm going to take Gonzaga to beat Georgia, although Georgia was a great pick for me at literally 1 week and 1 week only during the year. And this is one of those matchups, the second round matchup that Gonzaga elite high octane offense against this Houston defense, and hopefully Juwan Roberts is fully healthy and ready to go come next week. But I already said it in our group. Inject this game into my veins. There's not I don't I want my bracket to be right, but like I also want to see good basketball. And Joe's already been saying for the last couple of weeks, when looking at his bracketology, man, looking at some of these second round matchups, looking at some of these, this is one that like I couldn't. I don't think you could pay me to flip. Of course, I say that, and it's going to be a 96-72, score one way or the other. But that kind of game would get me really excited. Seeing, this 8 seeded Gonzaga with a chance to keep its Sweet 16. They've got the longest Sweet 16 streak. I think it's 9 years straight against Houston, who plays an elite level of defense and definitely has threats on the offensive side of the ball. So that's I'm going to take Houston to beat Gonzaga, but man, would I be looking forward to that game, which means it's going to be Georgia playing Houston, but it is what it is.
That's how it usually goes. That's why a lot of these matchups, I'll be happy with whatever we get. It's a tournament, but it's going to be interesting. I have Houston winning their game, and then I have Gonzaga beating Georgia as well. Again, the metrics like them quite a bit more than they like Georgia. I think Georgia it was a good year for them. I think they're a couple players away from being at the level of competing with some of these teams in the tournament, and they did. I think maybe good coaching job, but they just like maybe had outkicked their coverage this year. So I have Houston beating Gonzaga in that game as well. Greg, I think it should be a fun one, different styles. And there was a thought of like all the Sweet 16 appearances as we see Luna hop in. There was a thought about
What's the fifth
Gonzaga.
birthday anniversary of that?
Oh boy. Uh,
She's 5 today. It's birthday brat time. It's also dinner time. So as soon as we're done here, she's gonna get fed. Sit.
we'll hustle up then. We'll hustle up. But yeah, Gonzaga. There was a thought of like they always make the Sweet 16. I might take them to Sweet 16, but I like Houston's defense. So we're gonna go Houston in the Sweet 16 from that little portion. Next up, Greg, Clemson, number 5 seed in this region against McNeese, the 12 seed, and then Purdue, the 4 seed, and High Point, the 13 seed here.
Oh, two smaller schools that or low major schools that we mentioned preseason. We mentioned both of these schools for different
Mhm.
reasons. I heard someone and I can't remember who it was. I heard someone on the selection show say it's going to be McNeese High Point, and I'm not going to necessarily bet against that, but I am going to take McNeese to beat Clemson, which means Clark Kellogg's champion is going to be out on day one in my bracket. We can talk about that if you want a little bit. And Purdue, I know that it's this is not a cakewalk. This High Point team is good, man. We've known about them for a while. They got the job done in their conference tournament, but I am, for better or for worse, I'm married to these Purdue guards. And Trey Kaufman-Wren's playing out of his mind lately. I know that obviously they didn't do a ton in the Big Ten tournament, but I'll then take Purdue to beat McNeese and Purdue to go back to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I kind of thought I'd take against Purdue in the first round. And I did end up doing it, but I thought it would be different. I thought it'd be like them going up against a tough defensive team, and they're not. Like High Point's not great defensively, but what I will say is I'm taking them because they come at you in waves. If they can get Trey Kaufman Wren in foul trouble, this game is wide open. We've seen that outside of Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, there's been inconsistency. Fletcher Lawyer hasn't been that great this year in terms of consistency either. So I'm going high point in that game, Greg, and I'm going Clemson over McNeese. I don't think McNeese was really challenged this year. I mean, they obviously they rolled through Southland Conference, but I don't really see them having the juice to beat Clemson. I like Clemson's makeup. It pains me to trust Brad Brownell 2 years in a row to win a first round matchup, but I think I'm going to do it here. I like the makeup of their team. They rebound the ball well with Ian Shefflin at the very least, and Victor Locken, the former UC Bearcat. And then I have Clemson going to another Sweet 16 this year, which again pains me a lot. But when you look at kind of this little portion, like Purdue has their issues. Even if Purdue won, I'd probably take Clemson over Purdue because I like Clemson's. I think their guards could give Purdue a little bit of trouble. Next part up, we have Illinois as the 6th seed, and they'll be going up against the winner of the playing game between Texas and Xavier. And then we have Kentucky as the 3 against a 14 seeded Troy.
Before we talk about picking games, particularly in this pod, as soon as Xavier was announced in the field, I tried to get tickets to this game. I did end up getting them, but the first like 4 or 5 tickets that like I clicked on, I was like, yes, buy these. It was like, sorry, these tickets are no longer available. So I am assuming everyone in Cincinnati was making a mad scramble because for those of you who don't know, who don't follow college basketball, avidly, that's what we're here for. First 4 is in Dayton, not a long way to travel to get to see your team. If you're a Xavier fan, to get to see your team play a March Madness game, especially while it's more meaningful when it's still only 68 teams instead of whatever stupid number they come up with. But I digress. For the record, I will take Texas to beat Xavier, although I don't have to pick it. I'm going to pick it. I'm just going on the record. But then I'm going to take Illinois, fully healthy. Think that team could really do some damage. Joe's not going to like what comes next. I am taking Kentucky to beat Troy. He doesn't mind that. Here's the part Joe doesn't like, but probably honestly might pick in his own bracket because Joe's a self-loathing kind of person. Illinois over Kentucky. When they've been healthy, man, they've been good. Kentucky's obviously got their injury issues, and bravo to Mark Pope. It's a great first year. There's been a lot of stuff that's been out of his control. Players shifting in and out of the lineup. Missing that dynamic scoring that without Jackson Robinson. I mean, like, he did a fantastic job turning over an entire roster in an offseason. And yes, we've seen a lot of coaches have success in this era, but like in the SEC, yeah, obviously Byington, did a little bit at Vanderbilt, but like Kentucky was an SEC title contender for a good chunk of the season. That's not nothing to shake a stick at. I'm still going to take Illinois. I'd really love to hear what you're going to say about this.
Oh boy, here we
Not
go.
about my picks. I want to hear your pick. I want to hear how you pick this pod.
Okay, so let's start it off. I'll go Xavier to beat Texas. I think Kevin, a little bit of a home court advantage will matter here at not having to travel as much as Texas. It might actually matter on such short notice. It is Wednesday instead of Tuesday, which better. But um, this is gonna be a fun battle. Like I think this might be one of the most fun playing games we've ever had, and it might turn out to be a blowout. But we have Trey Johnson, an absolute bucket, going up against Ryan Conwell, who's also a bucket for Xavier, in a game where like I think it's gonna be could be back and forth. We have Zach Freemantle back in the tournament, which is good after he's had such a long career with injuries. But I think it's gonna be a fun game at the very least. A lot of good talent there. But I'll go Xavier to win. I'll take Illinois to beat Xavier or Texas, whoever wins, doesn't matter. As you mentioned, they got healthier. I think Kasparis is going to be a guy who starts picking up some name recognition in this tournament, and I think it starts with this game. And then I have Kentucky beating Troy. I mean, there is a possibility they lose. All these injuries piling up. Not only do you have Jackson Robinson out, Kirk Reese is already out. You have reports of Travis Perry getting hurt as well and possibly missing some time. So we'll see what comes out of that. That is their, I guess, third string point guard, who's a freshman who's played pretty well in the relief. You have Lamont Butler, who's supposed to be playing in this game, supposed to be back. That's at least the hopeful news with him. But like every time he comes back, he rehurts his shoulder and has to leave the game. So that defense goes down. I mean, they're 10.5 points favorites. I could see a disaster coming in, and that would be very not fun. But I have Kentucky winning that one. And then I have Illinois beating Kentucky as well, Greg. Uh, this is more about the injuries than anything else. And this does pain me to do it this way because I do think this region is particularly vulnerable. All right, so like you don't. This is a region that doesn't have Auburn or Duke. Houston, I think, is a very good team, but I think it's a little bit different. I would say they're my least favorite one seed out of all the teams this year. They could have gone on a run if they would have had Lamont Butler healthy and these metrics for defense would have been better. I could feel comfortable taking Final Four, but with the injuries, I think this is where the season ends. Their only hope here, I think, is that sometimes teams in the tournament shoot poorly. And we talked last week, Greg, about how when Illinois shoots less than 27.7% from three, that they lose a lot of these games. With with the, I guess people talk about the basketballs or the rims or the sight lines all the time in the tournament being different and a lot of teams shooting poorly. If Kentucky, because they are a good shooting team, can just kind of tread water with their shooting and make Illinois shoot poorly, that there's a chance they make the Sweet 16, which would just be incredible with how banged up the roster was. But either way, three seed last year, they lost first round. Got a three seed this year with all the injuries and Mark Pope's first year. I know a lot of Kentucky fans will be mad if they end up losing first or second round, but I think you have to be kind of like, okay, that was a solid first season for Mark Pope. Let's go build on it. All right, the bottom part of this bracket, Greg, we have UCLA as the 7, Utah State as the 10, and then we have Tennessee as the 2, and Wofford as the 15 in this region.
Yeah. I don't know that I have strong feelings about either UCLA or Utah State. I flipped a coin in my head and I picked Utah State. I probably could go back and forth on that game 100 times, but it honestly doesn't matter because I'm picking Tennessee to beat Wofford, and I would take Tennessee over whichever team won that game. So I'm really only worrying myself about 1 point in the bracket. What matters is Tennessee is, in my mind, going to beat that Tennessee tude, as Joe says, or just said. I guess that we can coin that phrase now instead of two seed tude. So
Dude,
I think if we put that on a shirt, you'd love to wear a Tennessee shirt around.
no.
Tennessee tude. A joke for those who don't know, Joe is not very fond of Tennessee. But anyway, Tennessee to my Sweet 16. So you want me to wrap or you want to do your picks and then we'll wrap Sweet 16s?
Go ahead and get your Sweet 16 real quick.
Okay, so my Sweet 16 in this region is Houston, Purdue, Illinois, Tennessee.
All right. All right, Greg, let's go Utah State over UCLA. I have not been impressed with UCLA this year at all. I don't think they have a lot of talent. They had their coach going nuts in press conferences. They play pretty good defense. I still don't like the offense as much. I want Utah State in this game. Their defense is putrid, but their offense is pretty fun to watch if you get the chance to watch them. Ian Martinez, very good player for them, their leading scorer. And I like the coach Jared Calhoun. I think he did a good job at Youngstown State by getting them close to the tournament last year, and then obviously taking the Utah State job. I have Tennessee beating Wofford, and then I have Utah State beating Tennessee. I typically take Tennessee to go pretty far in these tournaments because I have such a respect for Rick Barnes that I think even Tennessee fans don't give him with a lot of the early exits they've had in the past. But this year just feels different to me. I like the makeup of their team in theory, but in practice, there are some things that I don't like. And I think it starts with today in the SEC championship, they lose, right? They don't get a foul call for the first. They don't get free throws for the first like 10 minutes of the game, and it's because they don't drive to the basket. When we talk about these Tennessee teams from the past, like yes, you have good shooters like Dalton Connect, but you have to drive to the basket. Like I know that we made the comments about Chaz Lanier has to shoot, and that's great. They have to have more of a chance to get to the basket. I don't think they have traditional big guys who can really do that. Felix Okpara is good as a defender, but I don't think that they have that. I think it could be one of these games where this is Rupp Arena, so they're familiar shooting there. They did lose there this year, by the way. But I could see this being one of the games where Gainey and Lanier are off and they just don't know where to go for their offense because I do think this is a very offensively limited team, which is weird to say for a team that ranks so high in Ken Palm, 18th in offense. But we talked about it all year, Greg. Like, if one of those guys has a bad game, they're screwed. So I'm going Utah State. I don't think they're a better team than Tennessee, but I do think on a given day where Lanier gets in foul trouble or Gainey's bad shooting, can you tell me where they're going to go for their offense? Because I can't. All right. Oh, that was rhetorical.
Mashack doesn't like to shoot, but he can. Oh, okay. All right. Got
Yeah,
it.
there you go. That was rhetorical, but yeah, he could be it. All right, so my Sweet 16 in that region, I have Houston, Clemson, Illinois, and Utah State. I decided to get weird in that region, and boy, it seems like you got a little bit weird in that region too. Let's go to the last region, Greg. We have Florida as the 1 against Norfolk State as the 16, and then defending back-to-back champions, UConn against number 9 seed Oklahoma.
We'll pick Florida, obviously. And I started saying to myself as I was watching them play this week in the SEC tournament, did we kind of were we kind of maybe too fast to say it's Auburn and Duke and everybody else? And I know you had some similar sentiments, but I think this Florida team, even coming in with a 1 seed, might still end up being better than like we gave them credit for at points during the season. You just think about the balance that they have between the front court and the back court, multiple scoring guards, multiple options inside. This team is good, man. And, we gave them their due at times, but they still might be better. They might be a bigger threat to win the national title than I really thought. So I'll take them to win, and then I'll take UConn to beat Oklahoma. And I'm not going to go on a big rant and then pick UConn to beat Florida. I'm going to pick Florida to go to the Sweet 16.
Okay, I'm going Florida in their first game. I'm going Oklahoma to beat UConn in the 8-9 matchup. We heard like UConn didn't look that great in the Big East tournament from my watch. I think the comments about players already entering the portal isn't good from Van Hurley, whether it's happening or not. Seems like there might be some more going on. They had some portal misses. They don't have the same. They do protect the rim pretty well, but they don't have the same interior presence, I would say, as they've had in years past, and that's going to affect them. So going to Oklahoma, who was very battle tested and played well, and another guy who could really make a name for himself, Jeremiah Fears, in this one, could be a really good guy to watch. I have Florida beating Oklahoma too. I really like the guard play. They have so many different answers for how they can beat you. They have several big guys, several guards. Definitely worth checking out some of their health. Elijah Martin did come back to the game, but he was a little bit banged up, and they've had guys miss different times, but they have enough depth to cover up for that. So I'm going Florida to make the Sweet 16 in that little portion of the bracket. Next up, Greg, we have number 5 seed Memphis, number 12 seed Colorado State, and then number 4 seed Maryland and number 13 seed Grand Canyon.
I am going to get two birds stoned at once, one of Joe's favorite sayings, and I'm going
Okay.
to have Colorado State beat Memphis. Just really don't know where to go with Memphis. I know we've talked about we haven't mentioned it on the show yet, but Tyrese Hunter, hurt. Don't know where he's going to be. Colorado State's won 10 straight games, and like 3 or 4 of those were Boise State twice, Utah State twice, and I mean they beat Nevada twice is fine. But a couple of good wins, and they've been. I mean, like there are points where they've been blowing teams out too. So there might be that hey they were just hot kind of team. That happens to work out for some teams in March. It's a 5-12. You get these upsets sometimes. Um, I'll take them to win that game. Um, I did hesitate a little bit with Maryland Grand Canyon. In the end, Maryland's playing good basketball. I'm going to take them to win that game, and then I'll take them to beat Colorado State.
Yeah, and they just mentioned Tyrese Hunter. They said they don't know what the future holds for us this season with him, but we do know he'll be with us, which his presence from the sidelines apparently was a big deal. But that doesn't seem like a good
Hey,
update.
he's not dead, Joe. We know that.
It appears like they're reporting that he is alive, which is good to know. Good to know. Yeah, Colorado State over Memphis. Memphis was I had him as like a 9 seed. I have no idea how they got a 5. This is like maybe the craziest seeding thing I've ever seen. And a lot of other bracketologists maybe had him as an 8, some as maybe a 7, but a 5 is crazy, especially if you look at some of the metrics, if you look at the net. Again, the whole like they're 50th in the net, 6-1 against quad 1, 5-2 against quad 2, 10-2 against quad 3. There's two quad 3 losses didn't seem to matter too much. This is crazy. So for that reason, I'm taking Colorado State, who was actually higher in the net, has arguably a better resume. I'd say pretty even. And they have Nick Clifford, so that is something to watch out for there. Their star players playing. Memphis has other stars, but Tyrese Hunter, obviously being the point guard, might matter a little bit more to have him. So Colorado State to win that matchup. I'm going with the Crab 5. They have metrics that, like, if you play too much of your bench, it's not a good idea to go far in the tournament. They are very centered on that crab five. There is not much depth there, so that does give me some cause for concern. We talk about some of the SEC's physical play, and like Tennessee, like especially, is very physical. They can sometimes get beat by the whistle more than they can by the other team in the tournament because SEC they let them play. The officials know them. They kind of work a lot of the games. In the NCAA tournament, you get other guys who are trying to move on to the next round, and they want to make sure they get the calls right and don't let people play because of that. Maryland could be in danger of that. If they get one guy in foul trouble, it could be a curtains for him. So I'm taking a risk here, but then I do have them beating Colorado State as well. I think they've got good guard play, but those two big guys on the interior are just too much for whoever they're going to match up with in the first two rounds. Number 6 seed Missouri, Greg. Number 11 seed Drake in a clash of styles that they mentioned on the selection show, and then number 3 seed Texas Tech and number 14 seed UNC Wilmington.
I'm going to pick Drake to beat Missouri. I think Missouri had a great turnaround. Didn't win a single game in the SEC last year. They're a good team on offense. They don't play the greatest defense. Let's not forget this Drake team, though. Won the Charleston Classic, which included a victory over Vanderbilt in the title game. So this team can play with the big boys. I'm going to pick them to win this game. And then I will pick Texas Tech to beat UNC Wilmington. But then I'm going to turn around. I'm going to pick Texas Tech to beat Drake. I think it stops at one game for me.
Fair enough. Drake plays the slowest pace of any team in college basketball. That could be fun. I'm taking Missouri because the offense pans out, and I do think that changeup can maybe give them some issues to start the game. I'm taking Missouri because of the offense. I'm taking my Texas Tech Red Raiders against UNC Wilmington. I'm taking Texas Tech to beat whoever they match up with. Uh, Team that I talked about a lot earlier in the season. And that offense is crazy. I love the JT Toppin surrounded by all the shooters they have. It is a very good recipe for success. And I think that they are in a good spot to make the second weekend. I think even over some 1 and 2 seeds, I'd say they have a better draw based on what they get, which means they'll probably lose now because I said that. But if I were, I should say, if I were a person heading into this tournament and I said, hey, this is the pod you got, I might take theirs if you look at it. So just something to note there. All right, the last little quadrant of we'll get to here. Number 7, Kansas. Number 10, Arkansas. Bill Self, John Calipari matchup there. Then we also have number 2 seed St. John's against number 15 seed Omaha. So we also have Rick Pitino. Greg, what a battle of coaches in this little portion of the bracket.
You're going to go with Battle of Coaches over the Battle of Kansas versus Ark Kansas? I mean,
I
come
am.
on, man.
I
You got
am.
to think about what's really important. I do love that. It's weird how we got here with the talent on both of these rosters, and obviously the coaching talent. Um, I don't know that I have strong feelings about either of these teams, except that Kansas really fell off from where I thought they were. I'm still going to take Kansas to beat Arkansas, and then I'll take St. John's to beat Omaha. And if there's anything I know, it's that St. John's plays really good defense, and I think that's going to cause Kansas fits. And I think St. John's is going to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, they're just looking at the bracket. This is one other coach who's outside this region who has a national championship, and that is Tom Izzo. I'm pretty sure. I just went through it really quickly, but that is crazy to me. Yes, I'm going Kansas in the first game against Arkansas. Arkansas Boogie Fland may return. Aduthiero is out. Even if Boogie Fland returns, how good is he going to be? He's kind of rusty. Does it throw off the rest of the chemistry? It's going to be something to watch out for. Kansas, we talked about, they did struggle away from home, and I don't like their roster construction because some of the transfers didn't work out as much as you would think. But on a neutral site, I'll take them against Arkansas. And then I'm going St. John's in the 15 matchup. We'll go St. John's to beat Kansas. That defense is different, and I think Kansas will struggle with scoring against St. John's, being that they have shown, yes, it's good to have Hunter Dickinson, but the inconsistencies from everyone else is just frustrating. I think that could show up in this game. So, Greg, what was your Sweet 16 in this one?
This is the only region I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 advancing in the Sweet
Mm-hmm.
16. So it's Florida, Maryland, Texas Tech, St. John's.
That is what I had as well. So we've been recording for about an hour, Greg. Let's get to your Final Four and your national championship pick here before we wrap it up.
Here's where the fun starts, Joe.
Oh
I
boy.
hate it. Auburn, Florida on one side, Alabama, Tennessee on the other. I did not even think about it until quite literally just now when I
Woo.
was speaking. I did not even think about it until right now. That's four SEC teams, Joe.
That was a Twitter meme. They said, "Look at this Final Four. This could be all SEC," and it was those four teams. And people pointed out Tennessee can't make the Final
Well,
Four, but that's all right.
that's where I ended up. And honestly, I got to a point where I was like, Cooper Flagg's already turned his ankle. I had it Duke, Alabama in the Elite Eight, and I was like, I don't know, man. I got to pick something different. I don't think that's too wild. I know Grant Nelson's in question, but hopefully, if he misses the first and second round game, he's good for Sweet 16. Obviously that's optimistic. We could find out it's something bad. He hasn't even been evaluated yet, but it was hard to not pick Duke to the Final Four with what the narrative has been this year. It's been Auburn, Duke, and obviously for a while the only team that Auburn had lost to was Duke, even though it was at Cameron Indoor. I'm still taking Auburn to make the Final Four. I'm still taking Auburn to make the title game. And guess who they're going to be playing against? They're going to be
Who in
playing
Iron
against
Bowl?
Alabama. They're going to be playing
Oh,
against Alabama. It's going to be Auburn, Alabama for the title game. Wow.
who's
This
winning?
is never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Never in a million years. Auburn over Alabama. Auburn wins the title. Never going to happen. This was so much fun. Putting things on brackets on paper that's not going to happen is great.
I am absolutely shocked of how much I guess Iowa State I get because of the injury. I am shocked Michigan State and Houston how much you've talked them up, but neither of them made the Final Four.
Oh,
Wow.
but like, here's the thing, man. Like, I start looking at, I darn near was ready to do 4-1 seats the Final Four. I said, I can't do it. And I
Yep.
just, that's when I started getting funny, which by funny, I mean 2-1s and 2-2s in my Final Four. Wow, that's bold right there.
Yeah, well,
Um,
yeah, just hold my beer, Greg. Well, do you want? I mean, because I was in a very similar situation to you. I had 3 1s, and I was sitting there like, okay, I can't do this. So let's start it off. I have Auburn making the Final Four. I mentioned it's just the rest of that region. Iowa State's injuries, Michigan State's offense scares me. So Auburn could lose. We've seen they're vulnerable, but I take them. I took Florida in the bottom half of that side of the bracket, and they beat Texas Tech. So I had two of my lovely teams that I've talked about all year. Florida, the guard play gets them there. I have Duke in the top right, so I got the 3-1 seeds. I think Cooper Flag is okay. I do have some doubts, but I kind of look at those like, do I see them losing before the Elite Eight? No, I might as well just take them all the way to the Final Four. And then I had Illinois in the Final Four from the bottom part. So I obviously had Tennessee losing in the second round. I had Kentucky losing second round. I have Houston getting to the Elite Eight. And the ceiling of this team is still there. You can see it with Kasparis. If they can just shoot the ball. Again, a team preseason I was down on. And then I saw them play, and I was like, wow, this team has something. And then all the injuries and sickness happened. I didn't think I was going to pick them in a million years. Again, just like I said earlier, if you would have put a different team in this bracket, like if you would put Texas Tech in this bracket, I'd take Texas Tech to the Final Four. It really, a lot of it is how the bracket breaks down. Um, so I took a 6, probably the lowest seed I've ever taken to make the Final Four. But here we are. So Auburn and Florida, I have Florida beating Auburn. I've talked about how I like the way they can, if they do have go-to guards and Auburn does not, they have the bigs they can rotate in on Schneider Broom, and that is huge. So something to watch out for in this one. And then I have Duke beating Illinois. We saw they killed them at Madison Square Garden, which also scares me. But I do think Cooper Flag, if he's healthy, brings that Anthony Davis mentality of I can carry this team to a championship, and they have probably better talent around them than Kentucky did when you think about Marcus Teague and Deron Lamb being their guards. So Florida Duke national championship game. I'm going Florida. I teased it in the last couple of weeks, but Walter Clay, like Janai Broom and Cooper Flag, rightfully so, get a lot of the headlines. Walter Clayton is so good. He made so many incredible shots today. And it's not just him. If he has a bad day, he will set up his teammates. You have Richard, you have Elijah Martin, you have Aberdeen off the bench for your guards. Alex Condon's been rising up mock drafts right now. He's been very good. Had that injury when he was out. They brought Hamluckton back, who was going to redshirt. Unselfishly comes back. He wants to be a part of this. You have Chinyulu in there. You have Thomas Ha in there. It is a team where the rotation is like eight or so players, but they can go to nine or 10 if they need to. I really do think that if we're going to say this is about guards, March Madness is about guards. There are people like Cooper Flag who can carry their team without having the best guard play. Not saying Conklin is not a great guard, but Duke doesn't have as good a guard play as Florida, in my opinion. If we're going to say this is about guard play. This is the team that wins the national championship. I think they have the best guard play in the country. I don't know if there's anyone else who has consistently good enough guard play to even put in the conversation with them. I will hear arguments, though, if you have any, Greg. For multiple
No,
guards.
I just can't believe we got here, with where we were probably, 3 weeks ago and how far above we had, Duke and Auburn. But that Florida team is deep. And, you like you said, man, like 8, 9 player rotation. And I mean, the back of their rotation is as good as some of the, top of the rotation for other schools. That I think we maybe, again, they come into the tournament as a 1 seed. And I still feel like we slept on them a little. They have the win in at Auburn without Elijah Martin, and like the narrative in my head was like, all right, okay, that's funny. And now it's like you take a deeper look at that, and you're like, man, all the things that they've been through this year, and they won that game, and maybe this team is should have been, talked about along with the other two, and maybe they have enough to get the job done. So I don't mind your picks at all.
Yeah, I've like I said, the last couple of weeks I've really thought about it, and I just thought that this is a lot of the things we talk about. If this is the guards game, this might be it. And you're right, they have a couple losses this year. They lost 4 games, one at Kentucky, one at Tennessee, at home against Missouri, I remember. But it's it's a very good team. So I'm excited to watch this tournament. I think we came in maybe even 4 or 5 weeks ago saying Auburn, Duke above everyone else. And now it seems like because Auburn struggles, maybe because of Duke's injuries, that it might be more wide open than we thought. And Greg, you're right. I think the biggest takeaway I have is like this bubble was weak. And we talk about that. The teams in the field, I am going to have so much fun watching these games. Like I said, specifically those second round matchups, we talked about how many of them that were just like, man, I could see this going either way. So that it's gonna be a fun tournament. I'm excited for it. Any final thoughts before we log off and get to watching basketball this week?
I mean, just a little addition to what you just said. I think some of the second round matchups might end up being good just because of some of the tumultuous times that some of these teams went through. You take your Illinois, you take your Gonzaga, just had some ruts that they went through, whether it was just poor play or just injury, but those rosters are good. And when they're playing at the tip top of their game, you can look up and all of a sudden they're beating a 1 seed. It can happen. You know, don't know that it is going to happen, but Illinois is absolutely capable of going very deep in this tournament. Gonzaga is capable of beating Houston. I don't think they will. I'm obviously picking Houston, but there's a couple of teams like that throughout the bracket that are going to make especially that Saturday, Sunday really interesting.
I'm excited for it. Yeah, I don't have any final thoughts either. Just remind everyone to like and subscribe wherever you're getting your podcast, whether that's Apple or Spotify, wherever you're getting those, and also to like and subscribe to the TGH YouTube page. That's where we'll have all our podcast episodes. Greg, we'll be back next week to recap the first weekend of the tournament, make our updated picks for the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, and then if we change the national champion, all that, talk about what happened this past round, all that good stuff we'll have next week. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.